Thank you, Marisa, for that introduction. And with no further ado, let me continue with my presentation. Firstly, let me just share the screen. Tell me if you can see my presentation.
We can see your slides as well.
Just trying to click here. There we go.
Yes, perfect.
Great. Well, thank you, Marisa, once again, and everybody, and welcome to this webinar. What I will talk about today is how quality affects accountability for a CEO and a QA manager in the dairy and the food industry. Now, having been around the block for a few years and having worked in various food businesses, the accountability stays the same because you have the public out there as your customer, and you need to make sure that your food is actually safe. So starting off with just to connect to what Madalena was saying in terms of the milk quality on the farm. The milk price in South Africa is determined, and it's most probably the same in other countries, by a few factors, which are the somatic cell count, which is an indication of mastitis on the and the other health of the cow, the total bacteria count, percentage butterfat, percentage protein, and distance. Now, then there are certain premiums or penalties given to the farmer, depending on what these results are. The easiest result to manage for a farmer to get the highest possible milk price would be the total bacteria count, because that is about cleaning the dairy on the farm and making sure that all the processes, all the systems are working properly. So from a milk processing perspective, the dairy company would want to pay the lowest price for the milk, but there has to be a balance. They cannot have pay a low price and have a bad quality milk, because they will not be able to make a good quality product. So apart from the price, what else is important in terms of quality? And I want to explain this by the hand of a few examples. And you can see the guy on the right here with the orange overalls. That is an overall that I think not many people want to wear. So I'm going to talk about I'm going to share with you a dairy peanuts industry and a processed meat industry example. Now, firstly, here is a fine. It's not that much, but it's still high enough to be painful to the shareholder of the business. And the management within the company do not want to have the shareholders sit with a fine like this. And this was in 2021, which was an E. coli outbreak in the UK. And the company, which is based in the English town of Barnsley, was charged with failing to implement and maintain procedures. So even if you have the procedures, you still need to make sure that the management processes are in place so that you can actually manage the quality of your product. The second example, and this is actually quite a scary situation. This was the Peanut Corporation of America, where their CEO, Mr. Stuart Parnell, was sentenced to 28 years in prison after he forced his staff to send contaminated peanut products that was salmonella contaminated into the market. He was tried. He has received a 28 years prison sentence, and last year, in 2023, he applied for parole, but that failed. So this guy will get out of jail when he's 84 years old. And I think from a CEO perspective, there's nobody that wants to spend his golden years in jail because of a quality issue. The example of the Peanut Corporation, I actually saw that on a movie on Netflix, and I would highly recommend you watch this. It's called Poison: The Dirty Truth About Your Food, USA, where they also talk about lettuce, which is supplied into the fast food industry in the USA. So it's quite scary stuff. if you do not comply with the rules. I want to also share with you an example that happened here in South Africa, which was a processed meat issue. There was a huge listeria outbreak a few years ago, and the brand was the Enterprise brand. In this situation, there were more than 200 deaths. There were more than 1,000 people sick because of this contamination, and just the hospital cost was $10.4 million. The business loss was $15 million, which is substantial, and I don't think any shareholder would be happy to just accommodate this if there was a situation where systems were not in place and no compliance was taking place. So the question is that from a business perspective and especially from a board perspective, is will the brand survive? Now, the brand is an item on your balance sheet, which is actually an asset for the company, and a lot of money is spent to build brand value. And just one problem on one day in a factory or a processing plant can actually cause this brand to die. So the answer purely here is, or simply here is, can it survive? No, it cannot survive. And here you can see a newspaper article. Tiger Brands just sold its listeriosis bologna factory, but stays on the hook for the damages. There's no running away from your accountability. But the fact is, the brand is gone. Millions and millions of dollars are off the balance sheet. So this is the question, or this is the actual issue. There needs to be a balance between the risks that we face, or that a food factory would face, and the income. It's the proverbial carrot and a stick situation. If there's no money, there are no jobs. There are always risks, and these have to be managed. So the board or the CEO will have to look at the business in terms of the brand value. How do we manage the brand value? How do we increase that? And how do we protect the brand value? Customer safety, very important. You do not want your customers to even get sick of a product, because they will vote with their feet and go to your competitor, and your business will die. And then the legal issue. In terms of the Companies Act in South Africa and the Consumer Protection Act, the board or the directors in a company are personally liable, and they can end up in prison if they do not comply with the rules. So it's a tough situation. It's a tough cookie, and that the balancing act has to take place every day, every hour. Now, what I would like to share with you is the challenges that a QA or a QC manager in a food processing plant would face, and I'm talking here from personal experience. You know, and I've been CEO of various businesses in my career, and before that, I used to be a QC manager for a multinational company. And the challenges that the QA and QC managers face are these 4 issues mainly. There are others, but these were what I found were the main challenges. Firstly, there's productivity. These people are always seen as the guys who want to decrease productivity because they stop production, they stop machines, and they sort of interfere with the day-to-day operations. They tend not to be able to get funding for new technologies, because the production guys would look at them as buying new tools so that they can be interfering once again with the production and cause stoppages in the production process. Product loss, which is huge cost, recalls that take place. One wouldn't want that to happen. And who raises the flag when this happens? It would be the QA QC manager. And then there's reputation damage that they suffer if the culture in the business is not right. And Professor Lewis will speak about culture. They will find that that people are talking behind their backs. Their reputation is damaged. They also want to move ahead in the company, and they are actually bullied in this sense. So these are the issues that they actually face every day, and it happens that people are quite afraid and quite scared to actually apply certain rules and regulations because of the situation, if the culture is not right in the business. I also want to share with you a practical problem that I had about 30 years ago, which was in a dairy, and I was responsible for the quality. There was a contamination, and we couldn't find the source quickly, and we actually had to write off 3 10,000-liter batches of product, which was a huge amount of money. And I was tasked to find the source of this contamination. So what happened is that I had to be in the factory at 4 a.m. every morning, and I took swabs for about 4 weeks, and I was swabbing every product, inlet, outlet, tank, inlet, outlet, processing equipment, filling machine, valves, and filling nozzles. Everything that possibly could be swabbed, I swabbed. And I overspent, well, I spent thousands of swabs, and I overspent on the budget, so I was not very popular at that time. Production was stopped as we were searching for problems, and then we had the guys start the production again, and everybody was nervous about this whole process because you never knew when the contamination is going to feature in the next batch. So after 4 weeks, I plotted these results on a map of the factory, of the layout. On this chart, we had all the tanks, all the product lines, and I made a little cross on the factory map for every place where I found contamination. And after this period, I was sitting there. We didn't have much technology at the time and data processing apps as we have today. And I had to stand away from this chart for about 5 meters and view it. And I could see at one spot, there was a darker area where all these little crosses came together. And that indicated to me that that should be the suspect area. And I ran up to the processing area, got into or disconnected some piping, and there I found some cottage cheese sitting there, breeding there, and just releasing these bacteria or these contamination bacteria every now and then. And what actually happened is that there was a pipe that was cut off, and the length of the cut off piece was not at the right length, so the CRP system couldn't clean that. And the sad part of this whole 4-week exercise was that actually the one person responsible for the processing area, he knew about that, and he was trying to hide it. And that caused a huge fight in the business between everybody, because we had to get the accountable person to explain what happened. But the issue was, and what I'm trying to illustrate with my story is that the culture was such that the person who knew didn't come forward. We overspent on swabs on the laboratory budget. So there were a lot of unnecessary things happened that could have been spared if we were equipped with some technology that we have today and that is available. And I'm specifically referring to the BactiScan and the BactiScope of EIT International, of which Creeltech is a distributor in South Africa. If I had a BactiScan and I could have gone through the factory in one morning, it would have taken me 1 hour to check all the product outlets, whether there was contamination, so I didn't have to swab. And if I had the BactiScope, I could have checked the lines, because it has a 5-meter long probe, that I could have checked the lines, and I would have seen that contamination there. So yes, it's all about productivity, and productivity is time times money, and we need to find a solution or use solutions that can increase your productivity, that can increase the funding. You know, that's good technology that when it increases productivity, funding would be made available, and the product loss would go down. And this is a solution for the QA and the QC manager. It will change the challenges that I mentioned earlier and the internal fights, and it will be addressed by a better culture, of which Professor Lewis will be talking about. So the solution in that case study that I told you about now would have been a BactiScan or a BactiScope. So thank you very much.